All right, everybody. Welcome. Great to see so many people here. We are going to get started. So my name is Dan Belhassen. I am founder and CEO of Neovation Learning Solutions. We provide learning systems and related services to help you maximize the value of your training efforts. So first of all, let me clarify a few things. Number one, I'm a business user. So this presentation is from a lay person's point of view, okay? If some of you are like AI scientists, you are going to absolutely hate the sort of vague or summarized versions of things I'm going to present. But this is for a business person audience, okay? We're not going to try to be technical. We're not going to try to be like super scientific, right? This is about practical uses. I'm also not a lawyer. So I'm going to talk about things like privacy and other things, and I'm just going to talk about it from a business user's point of view. Check with your own lawyer if you'd like to. Also not an AI expert. It'd be a totally different webinar with an AI expert, but I think this one is going to be maybe a bit more fun. Okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to demystify ChatGPT. There's lots of different AI tools out there, some for images, videos, and so forth. We might touch on a couple things, but we're really going to focus on ChatGPT because that's the one that pretty much everybody's using. And I think it's the simplest entry point, and specifically how to leverage it in a very practical way within L&D. All right, so first though, I've got a poll for you. So let me start that poll. There we go. All right, so I'd like to understand the audience here a little bit. So we'll just leave that up for a minute. Couple things that you should know. We're going to move pretty quickly through the webinar. I always appreciate fast-paced webinars versus ones that kind of plod along. But there's lots of room for you to ask questions. So you can ask questions right within the chat. We have a couple people from my team here that's going to look and make sure that we can catch questions that as they come up to make sure that they get answered. Some of those questions might get answered later on within, like they're already part of the presentation, in which case we're going to hold off on them. Other ones we may answer right away as we go. Okay, so we're going to send you a recording afterwards. We can send you a link to the PDF of the presentation as well afterwards, so you don't have to worry about like doing screenshots or whatever else. We're going to talk a little bit about AI in general, but most of the time we're just going to look at really practical things that you can do with ChatGPT. All right, looks like we've got most people have responded to the poll. So I'm going to end that, and I'm going to pop in the results as well so that you can see those yourselves. All right. So, all right. So most of you here, so 10% of you say that you use AI often. Okay, awesome. 35% say sometimes, 53% say not yet, 2% say no, and I will not, which I always find interesting. I'd be very curious from that 2% in particular, those three people, to let me know at the end of the session if any of this has changed your mind. Okay, perfect. So we've got that done, and we are going to get rolling. So Neovation, as I mentioned, provides products and services, right? So we've got learning systems. We do lots of custom content, custom course development. We supply custom libraries. So if you've got a need, this is the commercial portion of the webinar. If you've got a need in any of these areas that we can help you, we'd love to talk to you. All right, and commercial. So let's talk about AI. But first, because it's dominated the news cycle, though the news kind of came a little bit late, right? Because the news really picked up on this about a month ago. But a lot of the conversation is this tech panic cycle, right? Where it's like the first reaction that a lot of people have is, this will never work. It's not very good. And then it's like, it's happening, but it's dangerous because it doesn't work well. And we saw it, right? Like hallucinations and other problems happening. That were getting a lot of press, right? Like crazy things with Sydney from Bing and so forth. Then it's like, wait a minute, this is working too well. We need to hobble it. We need to do something. Like legislation, which is good, regulations, which is good. That sort of thing is happening, right? And then it's like, we're going to get to this point where it's like, wait a minute, this is really powerful and we need to make sure everybody has access to it. right? Now, think back to the internet, because we went through this exact cycle with the internet, right? Eventually, it's like, no, internet is a right. Everybody should have it. Now, it's everywhere and there's no way to escape it. It becomes pervasive, which I think is going to happen here as well. And then you're going to have stories where people giving up AI for a month, just like they did with the internet, just like they did with social media and so forth. And then it's going to start all over again with some other technology, right? Because it's a cycle that keeps repeating itself, for thousands of years. And I think for all of human history, it's been this way. New technology comes, we don't know exactly what to do with it. We don't know how it's going to integrate within society. And so there's a lot of focus on the potential harms, right? So we've been here before. This is the latest version of it, but we've been here before. AI itself is, decades old. It's still pretty new, but we've had all these headlines that have happened over time, right? That have sort of taken us to this point. It's interesting. Self-driving cars were not nearly as big of a deal as ChatGPT, which says a lot about humans, right? Because we can't talk to cars, but we can talk to chat, and it behaves in a way which is sort of shockingly human, shockingly intelligent. Some people, instead of using the term AI, they use the term artificial reasoning, which I prefer, because like a lot of the things I'm going to show you today, I think means that there's inferences happening, there's reasoning happening. But let's take just a couple minutes and step back for AI, just to make sure we're all on the same page as to what it is. All right, so there's 3 different levels of AI. And again, not an AI scientist, super simplification. Narrow AI, good at solving particular problems, right? So this is like AI-driven chess. This is like good at solving specific problems, ChatGPT, Siri, Watson, Alexa, all that kind of stuff uses narrow AI. A lot of language translation, stuff that we've been using for years. We all have been using this for years, whether we think of it or not, right? And then there's general AI, which is good at solving new types of problems, generally considered to be human level intelligence. And that is perhaps coming soon. I think it's coming soon. A lot of the things I'll show you with chat, there's this talk about chat being, like this predictive model. It'll just predict which words are going to be spoken or what have you. And that is, I think, very sort of narrow view of what it does. It's a very narrow view. I think that it actually does much more than that, and we're actually fairly close to general AI, I believe. And then the third thing is super intelligent AI, right? So this is like Skynet. This is, well, hopefully not Skynet, but it's that level of capability, right? It's like well beyond human intelligence, and can possibly, update itself and do what have you, right? So, Michael, absolutely, Michael. We are going to oversimplify lots of things today. I guarantee you we will do that, because I don't want like, I want this to be fun, okay? And I want to just focus on the business side of it, the high level side of it. So yes, please, we will be oversimplifying many, many things here. All right, so super intelligent AI, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't happen. There's some really great debates about this, but we'll see how that happens, how that rolls out in the years ahead. But we're going to focus in on chat, because that's something we can be hands-on with today. So right now, ChatGPT, as of a few months ago, had 1 million daily users, 13 million daily users, 100 million registered users in total in January, right? And there's going to be far more usage than that, because it keeps growing and growing. We're going to talk about Microsoft essentially owns OpenAI, so they're integrating within all their tools, and we can talk about that as well a little bit later on. But everyone's got access to this because it's free. They can use it right away. I like to think of AI as a really bright 5-year-old, okay? Can do things that are shocking. You're like, why is this 5-year-old able to like bake a souffle? Like, how did it know how to do that? The thing is, though, that if you'll notice the 6 fingers and something going on with the teeth here, is that While it's really, really good at sounding accurate, it's not always accurate, right? But it's getting better all the time. Right, it's getting much better all the time, and that's the thing that I think has taken a lot of the headlines is all the problems. You know, this fact is wrong, that fact is wrong, but in reality, it gets better every day, right? So those things are going to melt away. So it's an artificial brain. And that's all I want to say about it is that it's really good at patterns and inferences, and I believe reasoning. Okay, but we won't get into like neural networks and so forth, primarily because I don't really understand them in detail. But that's okay. You don't need to, because you just need to know that the AI, this artificial brain, has been trained to, they say, predict the next word in a sentence. But you're going to see, nah, it goes well beyond that. Okay. So what it does do is it creates this artificial brain that has absorbed a massive amount of knowledge from the internet. And there's lots of different AIs. We're talking about chat. The main thing is that it has a really accessible interface. And that is the reason why it's become so popular so quickly. So enough about an introduction. We're going to dive in and see how can we use it. Now, some of these examples I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you them live. So actually go into chat. Other ones I'm going to show through screenshots, okay, of previous chats I've done, because it's going to be, it would take too long to do everything live. But I'm going to show you examples of all of these things that chat can do. Now, remember, you're going to get a copy of all this, okay? So we're going to start off with something really basic, right? How fast do swans fly, right? So you can get a factual answer for something, right? And, you know, Google's been doing this for a while, so that's not too exciting. You can say, how fast do swans fly? And say, please give me a citation, right? And then you'll get a bit more information from that, which is good. A citation. Now, chat has limited access to the internet, though more access now. And so they've been able to do more things. And get better access to the internet to have real-time information, right? And that's only going to get better over time. So let's go into chat right here. So this is a paid plan, but pretty much everything you can do here, almost you can do on a free plan. At least the things that we're going to be talking about today. So if you want to do a chat, then you just do this. Right? And you're going to get an answer. So for those of you who haven't seen chat before, you can do that. Very, very basic usage. So let's go into this is the participation portion. There'll be a couple times like this where I need your help. So somebody in chat, please give me a scenario, and a few of you can, and we're going to improv to show you what chat can do for creative writing. So I need a character. Maybe it's an animal, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a thing. So let's have some example. A polar bear, perfect, Lacey. Yeah, a polar bear, and a dragon, and Susie the swan. Okay, and what do they do? What are they going to do? A polar bear, a swan, and a dragon that go, that win the lottery. I like that. Win the lottery and have a party. All right. So this is, let's just assume that this is an absolutely unique scenario that we've asked for here, okay? So nobody, like, it's not like it's gone out to the internet and found a story like this, right? It is creating this, which is why it's so much more than just predicting the next word. Okay, so there's a lot of text here. I'm not gonna read it all, and you probably won't have time to, but like, this is creative, right? Okay, so let's do a couple things here. So first of all, let's change the story. Can you please change the story? I'm always polite to chat, you know, because, you know, Skynet maybe at some point. Can you please change the story to include a ninja and a game of tic-tac-toe? There we go. All right. So now this time they're playing tic-tac-toe, but not ordinary tic-tac-toe. I can't even read it as fast as it's generating. However, the quest for peace and friendship, intertwining the timeless game of tic-tac-toe, reminding all that even the simplest of game, profound magic can be found, right? Okay, that's crazy. And yeah, you could do lots of things with this. I could say, okay, tell me this, for instance, please summarize this story in one sentence. Okay, there it is, one sentence, pretty long sentence. Okay, please summarize in one word. Now, that is not just predicting words, okay? That's why this is like artificial reasoning is how I see it, right? Because you can do so much. Yeah, totally. You can rewrite this in, as a sonnet. Please rewrite the story as a poem. And there you go. Okay, now you could keep doing, I mean, like really, I think most people when they first start using chat, they just do stuff like this for hours because it's absolutely amazing how quickly that you can do this, right? How quickly you can create these things. It's really, really kind of shocking, right? So I definitely recommend that everybody spend some time, you know, playing with this and seeing how well it works. All right, so we've looked at a scenario. We had a unique scenario. We showed some summarization. So you could do lots of things, right? So you could do naming suggestions for different things. For instance, right, like if you want to have a naming suggestion for a program, it's really good at coming up with those things. It's really good at looking and suggesting resources as well. Now, again, it's right now chat's fairly limited. We'll show you some exceptions, but it's fairly limited as to how much recent information it has, right? So it's really good at anything that was before 2021. So any popular books, et cetera, it knows about them, it understands them. I'd hate to be in the book summarizing business right now because chat does an excellent job at that. You can do things like provide case studies. So I want a case study on unethical leadership. So, you know, if you're developing training materials, this is often what you want to do, right? You want to be able to develop stories about things, right? And it's really good at those stories. So it's able to come up with some stories about things. So you can have it just do creative writing, right? Like this, completely fake. Now, this was a very, very thin, right? Like I didn't give it much information. I just said ethical leadership in manufacturing. That's it. So I could have provided way more information, right? I could have provided, you know, absolutely, you know, different, you know, different scenarios, different qualities. I could provide more specifics. I could give it actors to use and so forth. All of that, right? And Carmen, you're right, Carmen. You don't have to say please, but isn't the world a better place when you're nice to the AI and you say please and thank you? I don't know. I think it is. All right. Now that's made up case studies, right? But you can get real case studies too. So this is the other thing that's really tough to do, you know, is to always get access to different case studies, real case studies for things. Now, asterisks, and we'll talk about this at the end, chat's not always correct, right? It will very happily make up information for you as well, right? So you do have to do some fact checking to make sure, especially when you're asking for things like this. Now, I could have asked for a citation as well, and sometimes it's really good at that. Sometimes it's not able to, and sometimes it makes up citations. Now, in the 4 months that this has been launched, it's gotten much, much better and smarter. So those kinds of problems that were pretty often the case a few months ago are getting less and less, right? Like it's improving a lot. Now, one of the things you could do is you can summarize. You can have it point at text, like on a web page, and it'll go out and read that web page and summarize information. There's other versions of this coming from Microsoft and other suppliers as well. There's nothing unique about Microsoft other than their connection with OpenAI, where the idea is that you can take all of your company information, or you could take all of your product knowledge about particular products, or all of your FAQs from human capital, or whatever information you have, and create your own chat interface that you can use within your company. So imagine from an L&D perspective, if you had access to all the content from all the training that you've done, all of the performance supports that you have, right? All of that material, and you could make that available to your employees or your learners through a chat-based interface, right? And that's going to be coming very soon. There's tons and tons of different tools which are going to facilitate that type of impact. So one of the things that you can do is you can rewrite content, right? So in this case here, I'm saying I've got a description. So this is one of the ways that I use chat a lot, right? Is, it's going to take me 10 minutes to really build a good paragraph about something, but in 2 minutes, I can just write a stream of consciousness of different notes and then ask chat to actually, string it together and make it readable. So that is very cool. That's an easy thing for you to do. Now, developing course outlines, okay? So any topic that is really well written about, chat is incredibly good at that. So let's do a live version of that, please. Okay, so I need from somebody here an outline for a particular course. Like what type of course should we be doing an outline for? Oh, how do I identify suspicious? Identify suspicious packages within an office setting. Okay, all right. Not one that I've ever done before. Okay, here we go. I mean, crazy, right? I mean, that's a lot of stuff. You'd have to spend some time to make sure that this is, like accurate and robust. I mean, it seems accurate and robust. Okay, so you've got an outline. Now, how long would it have taken you, the human, the non-expert on suspicious packages, to come up with this outline? I'm thinking more than about 10 seconds, right? Okay, so you want to develop a course. Here's what you do. Step 1, create the outline, right? Step 2, do this. Perfect. Now I have an introduction. All right, great. Let's keep going. Let's just do something later on here. Can you write me this section? Okay, all right, we got a lot of content. Okay, now let's go further. Have some coffee. Okay, so yeah, right. I could just keep going, and like within 20 minutes from now, I will have a extremely robust course that's on it. Now, again, it needs to be reviewed, it needs to be modified, it needs to be validated, etc. But the amount of time that it would take to do this for you, the instructional designer, would be enormous, right? So this gets you, I don't know, let's call it 80% of the way there. Within like 5 minutes, you've got tons and tons of content that's already been provided for you, right? And you can ask it pretty much any well-known topic that you can possibly, consider is there. And facing, like most of the content that we deliver to our learners in a corporate setting is kind of the same, right? Like there's there's only so many topics, and you could ask it for that same information, and you could say, I want it from within a manufacturing plant, or I want it within a, I don't know, pharmaceutical facility or something, and it will modify the text that it generates. right? So you can keep adding different examples. You can ask it for different things. You can ask it to change the, so you can say, can you please write that again, but for, I don't know, a high school audience. This is where my typos get immortalized. Oh, did I break chat? I hope not. That'll make a very awkward webinar. Yeah. Oh no. Okay, let's try this. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I asked it for a high school audience, and it immediately changed the story to be about schools, right? About clearly marked exits. Well, I guess that would probably be the same, but it changes some of it part, like drills and assemblies, for instance, right? So it understands a lot about context, right? It's really quite clever, and we can just spend all day doing that. Which for some of you, where this is new, I encourage you to do that. Maybe not all day, but okay. So let's do this live because this is really fun. I mean, one of the things that I'm sure you all absolutely love is coming up with quiz questions, right? So we know that's the thing that you just adore doing by hand. So let's see if chat can do that. Oh, let's say multiple choice. All right. So your most loved activity is now actually a bit easier to love. And again, may not get you all the way there, and that's okay, right? Because it'll get you a bunch of the way there. Okay. So also, can you give me three true, I don't know, false questions and two questions suitable for flashcards? There we go. Some true false, some flashcard questions, right? Super easy. And again, it's probably not going to be 100% what you use. And that's okay, because it's going to get you a huge part of the way there. And John, yeah, good point, right? Can you explain why that is the right answer? All right. Hugely accelerating for your work. So we talked about creating flashcards. You know, you could do matching questions as well. Pretty much any type of well understood, question format you're able to do, right? Lots of good variations. Thank you, Rusty. That's a really good one. You could do lots of things, right? So you can do skills tag, right? So, all right. So what are some skills tagging that I can use in my learning system related to that content? Right? Okay. Super easy. Um, you know, you can ask it for skills as well, right? And you can, which are the topics that you can then write about. You can ask it for self-assessment questions, right? Same kind of thing. All right. So we looked at a whole bunch of basic prompts, and with that stuff, that is already a massive time saver for anybody who's doing instructional design, course design work, right? Already, you could do so much so quickly with that. If you're working with subject matter experts, it's such a fantastic tool. You know why? Because you can solve the blank page problem, right? I mean, how many of you have had the experience? You go to get a subject matter expert to write you submit content. Okay. If you ask them to write it, good luck, right? It's going to be months before you get that back. Okay. So then you say, all right, well, then I'll interview you for content, right? But what are you interviewing them for? Like, what are the questions that you're asking? Well, you can get all those from chat, right? What you could also do is you could build the content in chat, right? And then have the subject matter expert actually review it, which is what we've moved to doing in some cases, because the subject matter expert will absolutely happily find the things that are wrong in the content, right? They don't have to start with a blank page. They don't have to try to figure out, what to begin or what the scope should be or what have you. They can just dive into it and they can redline and just say, yes, this is wrong, this is right, I'd word this a bit differently, what have you. So it's actually a fantastic tool for you to use in a whole bunch of different ways with subject matter experts. We definitely recommend that. So many different ways you can use that. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some other things now, some advanced prompts. Let me just take a moment and see if there's any questions that haven't been answered yet. All right, will learning evolve to more embedded or workflow-based learning from event-based courses with the advancements of AI? So I think so. I think how we deliver learning experiences is going to eventually be a master and apprentice type relationship. I'm not sure how far away this is, but I can absolutely foresee having a AI that's a person, as far as I can tell, that is tutoring me on a particular topic, asking me questions in real time, working with me just like I'm an apprentice and they're a master. I think that is just around the corner. Now, we do a lot of e-learning development. This is really important business, and it's going to be important business for years to come. But I think the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever else, is going to be having an actual relationship with an expert that is super patient and can identify your knowledge gaps, can directly work on filling those gaps. That's where I expect it's going to go in the next number of years. There's a question about language capabilities. So let me just ask, can you please regenerate, what language should we regenerate this in? Somebody who speaks a different language that can validate this. Somebody was here from Germany, right? Yeah, okay, in German. I don't know, should I say High German or Low German? I'm not sure that matters. I'll say High German. All right, Tatiana, this is your time to shine. Let's see what the quality of this is, just in general terms. Is this any good? Okay, all right, looking good. And you can do that in, I don't know. Let's see. How many languages can it translate in? I've never actually asked this question before. May have broken chat again. We'll see. Oh, Klingon questions. Yeah, okay, so that was one of the first things that I tried when I was testing out its multilingual capability. It did not do Klingon at that time. I was really disappointed. Carmen is saying it does Klingon now. Oh, okay, that's cool. All right, so that looks like I'm gonna get hung up again. All right, that's okay. It's not perfect technology yet. But let's take a moment actually to talk about something. So over here on the side is the chats that you've done, right? So I can go back to a previous chat. Now, in this chat, chat remembers the things that that you've talked about, right? So when you ask it another question, it's going to use the context of what you've talked about. Okay, now this is really, really useful because you could tell chat a whole bunch of things. We'll talk about privacy and confidentiality, but you can tell chat a whole bunch of different things, and it will remember those things, and it will you can ask it questions. So you could just upload a whole bunch of content on something, and then you can ask it to generate content based on the content that you've sent to it. So here's some of the languages. I can think it can do way more than those. Perhaps those are the ones that it feels are the most popular. So if I want to have another conversation, you start a new chat. And in the new chat, it's not going to remember, right, the other conversation. So if you're switching topics between things, I always recommend start with a new chat. If you're switching topics, right? Then you're not going to have the bleed over. Now, I've been using ChatGPT 3.5, right, which is the sort of the general model. It's the one with on the free system. Now, there's also ChatGPT 4, and with 4, you can do other things, like you can do browsing, right? So I'm going to turn on the website browsing, right? And then I'm going to say, let's ask a question about us. So I'm asking a question about us. Now, it doesn't know about us. We did not make the cut for the 2021 data loads. So instead, it's going to go to our website. Well, first of all, find our website, go to our website, read a bunch of stuff on the website, and then it's going to present that information, which it should do in a moment. Okay, so this is what it's doing so far. It's thinking, reading content, more thinking, and now it's providing the actual inferred content. And it has citations because it's reading it specifically from a web page. This could be your help system, right? This could be an FAQ page. This can be, now, it doesn't, like it seems to have a fairly limited range as to how many pages it reads, which, you know, makes sense. But there's some other tooling coming out which will allow it to read an entire like help system with hundreds of pages and provide answers for that. All right, so we've got a bunch of different references here and so forth. So there's a question about how companies can make their own AI chat systems. So we were kind of talking about that already. And so you can do it in a rudimentary way like this, but there's specific versions of ChatGPT coming out that are for that purpose. There's going to be a plan where you basically have a private ChatGPT for your organization, and you can feed it your information and have your employees use it. Right? I'm not sure exactly when that's coming out, but it's going to be coming out soon. Can use it with PowerPoint content, not integrated right at this point, but Microsoft has this whole suite of tooling called Copilot, which is coming out, and part of it has already come out. I won't play this video, but you know, just to show you what you can do stuff like create me a 10-slide presentation based on, you know, harassment prevention in the workplace or what have you. And it'll do all the stuff that we've seen, but it will include images. In the future, it'll include video, it'll include slides and headings and all that kind of stuff. Really well formatted. That's what Microsoft has been promising and why they invested so much money into OpenAI. You can also do stuff like troubleshooting. So, hey, my SCORM course isn't recording progress. Why might that be? So it gives you a pretty good response of things that you can check, and you can drill down into those areas just like you could before, right? Just like you could with the training material, you can keep drilling down. So a lot of these things are well understood problems, but you, the human, using Google would have to still spend quite a bit of time trying to find the right answer for something. And we found that it usually comes up with the right answer right away. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question about, hey, okay, if it's launched in a frame set and there's a data limit there, you know, like, why does a new window fix this, opening in a new window, which is, I think, one of the things that's awfully annoying and baffling. And here's why, right? So a lot of these kind of common problems you can use chat to solve. So chat can be your IT support assistant, right? My browser is sluggish. Why might that be? What should I do? Okay, which is infinitely better than Googling and reading a bunch of articles that are absolutely overloaded with ads, right? You're reading a paragraph, boom, an ad pops in, paragraph moves down. Oh, I hate that. This is much, much better. So I personally have essentially moved from using Google for things first to using chat for things first. And then I go to Google when I need to for something. But if it's information I'm looking for, chat is the first place that I use. You can do stuff like Excel formulas. In fact, this is like a very trivial example. You could get it to do much more complicated things. You could have chat code, right? Chat can write code in a whole bunch of different languages. So we won't spend more time on that, but there are lots of things you can do. Now let's get into some of the stuff that in some cases might be a little unexpected that it can do. So you've got data, right? We all have data, so much data from our LMS. And what can we do with that data, right? So I can say, hey, I want to provide you with two data sets. The first will be a list of learners and quiz scores by product. Second data set is going to be the same list, but now with the sales that those people are making. Analyze them and tell me if there's a correlation, right? It's like, yep, sure, no problem. Please provide me with this data set 1, please provide me with data set 2. And now it does the analysis and it says, hey, there's a correlation for quiz scores by product and sales with the correlation analysis. And here is and I won't get into what a Pearson correlation is, but that's what this calculation is. And it calculates this for you. And then it says, based on the results, we see there's a moderate positive correlation between quiz scores and sales for item A, right? Because the way that this analysis works, I think a 0.8 means that they're really, really correlated, right? If one's going up, the other one's likely to go up as well. This is not quite at that level. It's only a moderate correlation. Okay, that's a ridiculously simple example of what you can do. We have done very complex things with data analysis with it. It's really, really shocking what it can do. Microsoft's also building this into Power BI and other types of tools that they have as well, where you can increasingly just say what you want in just natural language, right? And it'll create the graphs for you. It'll do the analysis for you. No longer will pivot tables be a source of frustration because it'll just, set that up for you. Right, so now that I've got that data about the correlation, I would like to have an email to my boss asking for a larger budget because I had a moderate positive correlation, right? And we can probably improve that if you'll just invest more in your L&D, which is something that we all want. So here it is, right? Here's your letter to your boss. As you may recall, we recently analyzed the quiz scores of our learners in each product along with their sales. We found a positive correlation between the quiz scores and sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So you can have it do that. All right, so here's something else you can do, right? I'm going to combine data sets, right? So I already gave it the data sets and I'll paste them both in and it will combine the data sets for me. Here I am pasting in data set 1, data set 2, and here it is giving me the combined data set, right? That was really nice, really handy. And it would have been even handier if perhaps there was something about the data set that was even more complex. This is obviously a very simple example. How many of you have had a situation where you've had to deal with synthetic data? So you need test data for something, right? This is kind of maddening. It's kind of like quiz questions, right? Like it requires a lot of mental horsepower to come up with good synthetic data, but chat will do it very easily for you, right? This is one where the more robust your prompting is, the more robust your data set's going to be, but you can ask it to set up certain scenarios so that it'll give you the kind of test data that's really useful for you, right? So in this case, it's a more complicated example. I've asked for a data set of learners at an electronics retailer. I want 10 learners, fake names, training days, and I want 3 typical training courses for such a retailer. So boom, boom, boom. Now, I didn't ask for the names of the course, but I could do it again and I could ask for the names of the course and it would pick an actual, give me 3 different reasonable course names there. But now I've got some data, right? Now I could ask it to say, hey, and make sure that the data correlates to a strong correlation coefficient. So it's not just picking this data randomly, it's picking this based on the actual scenario that you've asked it. And you can go way deeper on this. That's just a very simple example. Here's another data set, slightly different scenario, and I've asked for insights, okay? So I've asked it to create sample data, and then I've asked it to explain that. And what does that mean? So imagine if you're uploading your own data, right? And then you'd be able to ask for correlations about the data or insights, or what does this mean? What can I learn from this? So now we've had a situation here where learner three here is not doing as well, right? They're running behind, let's say, compared to the other ones, right? So I can ask chat to write me an email for learner 3. Dear Learner 3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, mandatory training can be challenging, but I assure you it's essential for your personal and professional growth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can use you can use this for training interventions as well to generate personalized, but at scale. Here's something else, okay? So this is something which is a really cool thing to be able to do. So we are going to ask chat to do a scenario for us, okay? So let me get that in here. Here we go. Can you take me through a text-based adventure of navigating through an ethical dilemma in pharmaceutical sales? All right, here it is. I am Alex, the pharmaceutical sales rep who prides himself on promoting ethical standards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Won't read this all, but what should I do? 1, 2, or 3? I don't know. What should I do? Okay, how about I do 1? No. Yeah, 1. 3? Okay, 3. All right, so I've done 3. Okay, I've decided to take some time. More scenario, more scenario, more scenario. What should I do now? Okay, 2, etc., etc. Okay, boom. I need an explanation. So you can really see how this would be, yeah, absolutely. You want to do a branching scenario, an articulate or iceberg or something like that, you absolutely can do that, right? This makes it so much easier. And in fact, I fully expect that Articulate and the other tooling providers are going to have this kind of stuff built in. You're going to say, I want a course on blah, 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 and it's just going to generate it for you, including scenarios, including other things like that, because it's just really, really good at it. So let's look at one of those. So I need a topic, and I'm going to create a course real time here using this course AI tool. So a topic that somebody has. Can you elaborate on the comment that are going to have company-specific ChatGPT accounts? Yeah, so chats, well, OpenAI is coming out with this tool, but actually I want to start this business expansion in Australia. Okay, awesome. We'll start this going. Okay, there's my course on business expansion in Australia. It's cooking. Okay, so let's answer a couple questions while we wait here. The company specific ChatGPT accounts. Yeah, so ChatGPT is kind of an individualized tool right now, but they are coming out with, like, I don't know what they're going to call it, but like a company account or a team account or something like that, where you're going to be able to have controls, right? You're going to be able to set controls for things. You're going to be able to manage people's user accounts. There's probably a bunch of auditing that'll be there. There's probably like logging of questions and answers and other stuff that they'll provide, as well as you would expect on a company-based tool. And what I'm expecting is that you're going to be able to load it in with data sets, right? So you're going to be able to load it in with your knowledge-based content, or load it in where it points to your website or your, human capital policies or whatever else, so that it has a whole bunch of company-specific context. And then you're going to be able to allow your team, should you choose to use it themselves, to ask questions about your company's information. Now, for those of you that are on the Microsoft stack, now Google is doing the same thing, but Microsoft's just a bit ahead. For those of you on the Microsoft stack, they keep making announcements all the time. Their vision is that all of your information that's in OneDrive, that's in all the different sources and Teams and so forth else, will all be part of this giant brain, right? Where whether somebody's chatting in Teams, they could ask a question that chat is able to answer, or Azure in Microsoft's case, right? Because it's all going to be connected, which is going to be remarkable. So again, it's going to change how L&D professionals work, because a lot of the topics that you have, it takes a lot of time for you to create. Okay, so Rusty, if you've got 4,000 manufactured items, that's a lot of information, right? Imagine if a learner could just ask a question about one of those topics where every single spec guide, how to use guide, informational video, all that kind of stuff is already indexed, right? It's already available for you to access, for your employees to access, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, this is taking a couple minutes. We are going to come back to that. Let's talk about some best practices, right? You want to be clear, you want to be specific, avoid ambiguity. It's really good at kind of reading your mind, but not perfect, right? So the more clear you are, the better. I also find that you could ask multiple questions at one time, and it's really good at keeping track of them all, but it's even better if you ask it a question at a time, because you could look at the response and then you could ask your follow-up based on the response, which I think is better. I like talking to it like a real person. I call it chat. Different people at our company, they use different names for it. But I like talking to it as a real person. And like I said, at some point it will seem like a real person, because synthetic video is coming very soon, real-time synthetic video. So you can ask it for the desired simplicity or complexity in the response. You could ask it for a tone. You could tell it to assume somebody's identity, like give me an answer like Bill Nye or what have you, right? You could do that. Use proper grammar and spelling, because it can misinterpret what you say. Provide a context. The more context you provide, the more specific the answer is going to be, right? And as I mentioned before, if changing topics, start a new chat, because then it won't be influenced by the previous conversation, because you're the director. This is your job, right? So AI is like this actor. You have to direct it. You have to give it a motivation, right? And this is prompt engineering. Where you are directing the AI. And I think we are all going to be prompt engineers. It's going to be just like using a word processor or an email client or whatever else. We will all do this in our jobs. All right, so let's talk about risks. Oh no, it failed. Maybe because I misspelled Australia? Oh no, I just didn't capitalize it. Demo failed. Terrible. All right, I'm going to try that once again. And we shall see. But in the last few minutes, we're going to tackle a few topics, including risk. Okay, so there's a couple ways you can use chat. Okay, one of the ways is you can use chat here. If you use chat like this, OpenAI can and will use whatever data you give it in order to train and improve chat. So what you do is you go into settings and you go into this beta feature or data controls, and you turn off chat history. Now it's private. Now they will not use it for training. And you also don't have chat history, but this is how we use it ourselves when we don't want anything to be recorded. So it's definitely something that you can use. Again, ask your lawyer. But that's really useful tool that you can start using. It wasn't always there. That's relatively new. In terms of copyright, so OpenAI says you have a copyright on whatever it is that is outputted as an answer, okay? So you've got that. Now, at the same time, there's a bunch of lawsuits that are happening right now that is going to test that, because it was trained on a whole bunch of data, which some people feel they should have been paid for. We're going to leave that aside, because we're going to see how that works out in the courts. But chat is a lot better at not hallucinating, but in the past has hallucinated easily and quickly. So you've always got to check the responses and make sure that it makes sense. Chat can also come back with factual errors, right? It can get errors on things. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do in terms of bullying the AI, right? You can convince chat that you are right and it is wrong, and it generally will agree with you and then try to explain why it's wrong, even when it's right. There's all sorts of copyright issues. This is all going to sort of take a few months not months, probably years to kind of work its way through, and we're going to see how that rolls, how that ends up. So again, check with your lawyer, right? But from an ownership perspective, you have to turn off chat history, right? You have to turn off chat history to not have OpenAI use whatever content that you've supplied. There's all sorts of stories about AIs behaving badly, basically doing all sorts of crazy things, entertaining stories. But remember, these are the early days. It's the early few seconds of this AI revolution, okay? This is only going to get better and easier. There's all sorts of things that
I
can
am
be
not
done.
Morgan Freeman, and what you
Video
see
deepfakes.
is
This is
not
actually a
real.
pretty old video right now.
Well,
This is not
at
Morgan
least in
Freeman, right?
contemporary
He is
terms, it
not
is
speaking
not.
to you. But imagine that this is your virtual tutor for your organization, right? And you can actually interact with a tutor live. That is coming very soon. And there's a lot of tools that you can do that. But there's a lot of fake stuff too, right? I think just yesterday, there was this image of like the Pentagon potentially having some kind of explosion, and the stock market dropped by like 0.3 points or something, right? Like there's lots of ways that this can be used to create fake information, which is really problematic. But there's a lot of mind-blowing things too. I've got a video of a winter scene, and I can turn that into a summer scene using the same type of technology, right? And that's going to become even more prevalent because it's not just limited to text. There's tons of stuff about images that you can do, which we want to get to. Maybe we'll do a future webinar on it. You could do things like image reimagining, right? You can have one shot of a room and you could say, hey, give me that room again, but this time with a, I don't know, bright blue bed covering, right? Boom. You know, there's tools that will do that for you. There's tools that we're using already, we've been using for a couple of years now, that'll generate synthetic actors. And that's a little uncanny valley so far. They're not perfect, but they're really getting better. And very soon, you're going to be able to interact absolutely real time with these types of avatars, right? But there's some really crazy things that are happening where it's becoming harder to tell what's real. I mentioned that you can generate code for it, so we won't spend much time on this, but you could do all sorts of things with coding. Okay, last couple minutes here. Your AI assistant has arrived. It's able to do tons of stuff for you, right? And the near-term future is all sorts of crazy stuff are going to happen. There's going to be experiments with having the AI improve the AI finding ways to create money. The AI, there's going to be scandals soon, I'm sure, where, you know, the GameStop type story about stock manipulation using social media, guess what? You're going to be able to do that 1,000 times faster, easier, more prevalent with AI, right? You could generate all the social media posts. You could be like an army of people that are generating these types of scenarios. So there's a lot of problems that can happen here, but there's a lot of emergent type behaviors like this virtual world with AI people that just, you know, spontaneously started getting jobs and started forming habits and stuff. So really, really fascinating stuff that's happening, but it's becoming integrated with everything. Microsoft is in the lead on this, but Google, Facebook, everyone's going to be doing this. Now you can combine the AI with robotics to have it do all sorts of things like, hey, sorting recycling, huge problem, sorting recycling, right? But you can do that much better with modern AI. Now remember, this is the early days, right? This is like 1995 with the internet, okay? We've got a long way to come. So I think that software interfaces are going to dramatically change, and we're going to have conversational interfaces to a lot of things. There's going to be this personalized coaching and knowledge on demand. There's going to be a big shift in jobs, but remember, just like every other sort of revolution, now, you know, it takes the time to shake out, and some people will be impacted negatively, for sure. But on balance, what will happen is new jobs will be created, right? And this will become normalized and it'll become regulated too. They're talking about a global regulation on AI, which I personally think is an absolutely good idea. Your competitors are using AI already. And so I definitely encourage you, if you aren't already, to play with it, get familiar with it, and understand that we're at the peak of inflated expectations right now, right? We're like, oh, this is amazing, so many things, it's probably going to do everything, right? But this is a pattern that repeats itself, right? We're going to go through the trough of disillusionment, right? And then we're going to get to productivity, where it's going to be integrated in everything that we do. So the revolution is here. We're using this as much as possible, but 65% of our team in our last internal poll is using it on a daily basis. So 35% of our team aren't, right? So we're not that different, right? But what we're doing is we're trying to use it for, integrate it early within everything that we do, both internal work that we do, as well as what we're doing with our products, right? And we're really trying to leverage it because it's a massive tsunami wave that's coming, right? And we want to have a surfboard. All right, so we are pretty much at time. I'm going to stay back for a few minutes to answer questions, but we'll close the formal part of the webinar right now. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Hope you found it useful. As you leave, there's going to be a survey. Please answer the survey question because we want to know. Was this useful? Was it well presented? Did it move too quickly? Did it move too slowly? That's the kind of information that'll be very useful for us. And also, do you want more? Should we create other webinars that are kind of like this? What we love to do is to demystify topics, right? Just make them simple, make them easy. And that's something that we greatly enjoy. So thank you all very much. All right, we'll hang back for a few minutes if anybody has additional questions that they wanted to ask. Okay, so here's one. Does ChatGPT use the deep internet? So it doesn't. So by default, it doesn't. But you've got this mode now on the paid version of Chat where you can turn on browsing, right? Just like that example that I showed. And then you can ask it a question. I don't know, what's the headline on CNN.com? I don't know, just something that causes it to go out to the internet, right? So you can ask it specific questions for things based on the web. Now that's a beta feature. I haven't used it very much. It's just been launched, but it's pretty cool. I'll show something else as well in a moment once this finishes, which is kind of interesting. So it's going to get better at using the internet too, because you could ask it too bad, it failed. Didn't quote the headline, likely because of an image. Okay, all right, that's pretty cool. So it actually provides, okay, but it does show the list of stories. Okay, all right. What are the top stories at CNN.com? Can you summarize in one sentence? Okay, so we'll do some summarization here at the same time as doing some web browsing. All right, in the meantime, let me see what other questions we have. Oh, the course creator. Oh, we never came back to that. Oh, it failed again. Oh man, maybe it doesn't know much about Australia. Moving to Australia. I don't want to give up on Australia. I love to Australia. So let's do that again. Oh, maybe the service itself is down. Okay. It is courseai.co. And there's a bunch of these different tools. This is one I like because it's really, really easy and usually works really well. That's why I showed it, but there are a bunch of tools. If you Google, tools, to create courses, AI courses, you'll find lots. Okay, so here we go. Some information here about top headlines from CNN. So it's going out and getting them on the internet. Now, again, it's pretty limited right now, but like, I don't know, a couple months from now, it's going to be able to do a lot more with this. So if there's privacy, we talked about privacy a bit, right? Where if you want to have your chat not used for training, you need to go to data controls here and you need to turn that off. If you turn that off, it's not going to use it for training. So you definitely want to do that if you're doing anything sensitive or doing something with sensitive information. How much of my presentation is aided by AI? Oh, that's a really good question. So I started off building this presentation asking chat to tell me the things that y'all might find interesting. And it gave me this big outline of stuff, and then I customized it from there. So, I absolutely used AI to help me with this, as I do with pretty much everything that I do these days. So Neovation, where are we using AI? I mean, we're using it within course development. We're using it within, just sort of work. We're using it in data analytics, and we're building it throughout all of our products. We're retooling everything in order to have AI at the core, which I think is going to happen with all software, right? All software is going to have AI at its core. It's going to take some years, And it's going to be led by like the Microsofts and the Googles, but eventually it's going to be an absolute expectation that you all have. Do you have a way where we can share our AI best practices with each other? No, we don't really have something like that. That's a good question, though. Maybe put that into the survey responses if that's something you're interested in, and we can look at spinning up a community, perhaps. Are we going to add ChatGPT like tool to the LMS toolbox? Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be integrating it within all of our products in, I think, some kind of unique ways. But it's absolutely going to be there. You'll get the link to the recorded webinar. As soon as we can get it posted, we're going to post it up on YouTube and clean up a couple things, and then we'll get it there, I think, probably by tomorrow at the latest. How do you get ChatGPT on your computer? I never showed how to actually get there. So you can go to chat.openai.com, and that'll take you there. Now, I'm already logged in. You'll have to log in. If it's the first time, you'll have to create an account, that sort of thing. Does chat contribute to the internet? Oh, really good question. Not really right now, other than the internet is quickly filling up with content that's been created through chat, right? A lot of people are just using chat to create blog posts and other content pages. Please, if you're going to do that, edit them. You got to edit them, okay? They're not like ready to just publish online. But a lot of content is being generated, at least chat assisted, for sure. Is there concerns about ChatGPT automating jobs? Oh, okay, let me tell you this. I am terrified by what this technology will do. I have no idea what it's going to do to my business or your business. I have no idea if it's going to, like it has the potential. Well, it's going to be disruptive no matter what, right? So we are terrified. I'm terrified. So the only thing that we're doing is we're trying to learn it, to use it, to as Carmen says, adapt to it. We see that as our own defense, is to be one with it as much as we can, because it's absolutely terrifying. If anybody is in the business today where you feel that your core value is generating content, that's not a great place to be. That's a scary place to be. Your core content, because that's the easiest thing to replicate. We've heard about IBM and other people, slashing thousands of future jobs because they assume they're not going to need people doing like AP entry and a lot of customer service jobs in the future, because they can see how this is going to be able to handle those things. How ChatGPT was trained. Is trained on the internet. Like, they don't say exactly how it was trained, but it absolutely went to some very common places on the internet that are the most popular sources. So I don't have much more information than that, but OpenAI probably has a bunch of information up on their website. Let's see here. Maybe one or two more questions. Have you used it to find, fix bug in your code? Yeah, we use chat with our developers. Absolutely. Again, some of them have adopted it really strongly and they're using it and they're saying, it's accelerating their work by like 30 or 40%. Other people, haven't adopted it quite as strongly, but we're looking to adopt it throughout all the aspects of what we do, including software development, marketing, sales, customer service, content development, everything, right? Like, there's no area of our business, accounting even, there's no area of our business that we're not introducing AI into. All right, I think that's it in terms of questions. Definitely happy to answer additional questions if anybody wants to shoot me an email. Easy to find, dcb@neovation.com. And we've got a bunch of information up in our Neovation website as well, the articles that might be interesting to you. Thank you all for coming, and I hope to share with you again. Bye for now.